Okay, hello everyone, and this is Tom Geisler, and this is another episode of Discovering Autism. And I have got a guest whose name I'm going to pronounce correctly this time. It's Tyler Malden. I had said Taylor before, and he was very nice about that. He said, no, Tyler. So, okay, this is Tyler. And Tyler, I want you to tell me all you want about who you are.
Okay, I'm Tyler Malden. I'm 20 years old. I live in the southern United States, and I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome when I was 6 years old. And I remember parts of taking the tests that I was given, but I didn't know what the tests were about, and I didn't know that I actually had. I didn't hear the term Asperger's syndrome until I was 10 years old. So, and I didn't know exactly what it was at first, and it wasn't until a few years. I didn't really think about it that much. I thought about my ADHD symptoms a lot more than I thought about. I thought that affected my life a lot more than Asperger's syndrome, just because all I really knew about it was that it was people who had it were socially awkward.
Mm-hmm.
But then a few years later, I realized that it was a form of autism. I didn't assume that before. So that was when I started researching more about autism and and the forms of autism, and I realized how much of my life is affected by it, and how it's not just a disorder that affects a few areas of my life. Like everything everything when it's seen in light of my autism, it all makes sense why I ended up being the person that I am.
Yeah. So
that was when I really started learning about it more, was when I was 15.
Wow. So you were born what, in like 1998, somewhere around in there?
Yes.
Okay. Such a different time. I was born in 58, so you can imagine the difference of growing up. I was also diagnosed attention deficit, or back then it was, I don't remember what they called it. It was I think it was either ADD or AD. I don't think they did the ADHD stuff back then. I don't know if they had differentiated between the hyperactive and the inattentive. Impulsive, was it hyperactive, impulsive, and inattentive? I don't think those designations or differentiations were made then. When I had, I don't know how much you had as far as support services in school, but I had basically nothing.
That's also the case for me.
Really?
I had basically no support.
Wow.
Or it was a very, so I went to a first I homeschooled,
Okay.
which generally is much better for people like me,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't really good for me. It ended, like, after I turned 5 or so, it wasn't good for me anymore, because my mother I don't think she really knew what she was doing.
Yeah.
I don't think she wasn't really prepared for my needs.
Yes.
So
Gotcha.
I just hated it, because most of I thought of math as being really boring, because all it was just algorithms
Mm-hmm.
and performing the same tasks again and again and again. So I definitely didn't like math. But I mean, I don't see how anyone could like math if all they've learned is arithmetic.
Uh-huh.
So I ended up kind of hating. I didn't really like my homeschool, and then when I was 12, I was moved to a private school, and yeah, it definitely wasn't better than public school. It was definitely a lot worse from what I know about public school.
Really?
So I didn't really the classrooms were not the classes were not there was no flexibility. There were you
Hmm.
everyone took the same classes for one thing. There were no AP courses or anything,
Gotcha.
and there were no special ed courses or gifted programs or anything. So I just had to be
Mm.
I just had to be in a class of people, and my needs were not like that of the others.
Yeah.
Um, one so I struggled with a lot of things when I first started school. One thing that I struggled with was writing. I had very good handwriting, but I had OCD traits
Mhm.
surrounding my writing, and everything I wrote had to look perfect
Mhm.
and be worded perfectly. And so I hated literature because of having to answer questions at the end, and I didn't know how to answer the sorts of questions that the literature asked, like, what do you think this person was thinking when this happened?
Yeah.
I didn't. I had no idea. Like I couldn't. I had difficulty
Yes.
from inferring anything, and I wanted the answers to be very straightforward. And when that wasn't the case, and I was afraid that I would get the answer wrong or not completely right, then I
Yeah.
didn't. I just kind of shut off.
Yeah.
And I wrote so slowly that all my homework took a very long time. So I spent most of my time each day just writing.
Uh-huh. Wow. You've opened my eyes. I don't know. I mean, I made a lot of assumptions that I just have learned are wrong. I thought, wow, things were so backwards and unknowns about autism and everything that it was a terrible time to be autistic. But um, like I say, really, there was nothing done specially for me. The only thing I think that was probably done, and I don't know this for sure, I think in a few classes I was put in the I guess you could say the slower classes or the not with the top bright kids,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't even know how to address that yet because I was not stupid, but I was dealing with things that I needed to deal with before academia. And it sounds sort of like you were the same thing. Like if you had gotten the obsessive tendencies of writing, if you could have controlled that or found another, I don't know if typing would have been better for you than writing, or you know what I mean, or if there was some alternative you would have found to get through that hurdle or get over that hurdle to where you go, okay, now I can express myself
Yeah.
written easier, then you would have then started to really blossom and achieve your potential.
Yeah, and the school was all around very rigid about. I mean, everything in general was rigid.
Mm.
I couldn't have. Yeah, that was actually. It actually got worse as I got older. So the school's a private school, and they accept like anyone from any age.
Okay.
So it's there are people there who are in preschool. All the classes are all at the same school.
Mm-hmm.
So I kept going to the school until I was in 10th grade, and then I finally dropped out. I finally was allowed to drop out, and then I took the GED a year later. But the worst part of my worst years were ninth and 10th grade, because after that I had overcome my writing problems and oh, sorry, I'm doing the clicking thing on the
Yeah, I just gonna
screen
say.
again.
Yeah.
Okay. The worst part of it was in ninth and 10th grade, because I overcame my writing problems. I stopped struggling with the things that I previously struggled with. So then I felt too far ahead, and but when over part of the summer, when I was 15, when I was 15 and a half, about to go into ninth grade. Um, Part of over the last portion of the summer, I taught myself a lot of Algebra 1, and then I learned the rest of it, almost the rest of it, over Thanksgiving break. So then the rest of this, and then I learned Algebra 2 right after that. So then the rest of the school year, I had to be doing Algebra 1, and it was really, really boring. And at that point, the science and history curriculum, teaching the same facts over and over, got really, really. I just couldn't tolerate it
Yeah.
anymore. So
Yeah.
the next, having to go to school for an entire year was very painful.
Mm.
So I started learning math because I realized that I was previously behind in my math knowledge, and I knew that by then I decided that I wanted to do something. I wanted to go into a physics field,
Okay.
so I would have to learn math in order to excel in that. So then I started learning. That's when I decided to start learning math, and when I really started getting serious and actually caring about my education, that's when my experience with school became it became really it was terrible.
Wait. Now, when it became terrible after you started becoming excited because you were ready to learn and it was holding you back.
Yes,
Wow.
that's it. There was the school's ability to compensate for any extra needs was just egregious.
Wow.
I couldn't. I requested to being able to take different classes, but my principal just, that's not a rule that they allow. That's not something that they allow. And when I would take out when I would like when I would take out a math book or something in class, in my other classes, my teachers would always complain too, and they would say you need to finish your homework first. But it made me upset because
Yeah.
the homework that we were doing was stuff that we've been doing since 7th grade. like the English. I don't know if this was the case with your school, but what happened with my curriculum was it just keeps reiterating the same. In English, it keeps reiterating the same concepts indefinitely.
Yeah.
You learn, they still teach you what a subject and a verb is in 10th grade.
Yeah.
So I thought, what's the point in doing those assignments when I can be learning something every day? But yeah, my teachers just they seemed to actually resent the fact that I wasn't interested in their classes, and it was interested in going my own way and learning.
Wow. You are a prime example of why, or just of the problems that face people with autism, especially your age, and all through the ages, really. It's just I'm learning so much from you, and it's a joy to talk with you, to get your perspective, because like I say, I had a false assumption that the schools were really starting to step up to the needs of at least the kids in high school and below, those needs. But maybe there are schools out there, but it's not all of them, and you're proof.
Yeah, I wish I had gone to public school for some time just to see what it was like.
Mm-hmm.
But from what I've heard about it, it's a lot. It definitely is a lot better. Another thing about my school was that it was my school was fundamentalist. So I learned a lot of things. The history curriculum and the science curriculums were terrible because they were so. The history curriculum was just so polluted with bias that
Man.
as I've gotten older and remembered more of the things that in the history book, I cringe more and more. Like it was very revisionist history,
Oh
and
boy.
it it discouraged critical thinking to a degree, which even back then, when my critical thinking skills were much less than they are now, I found myself very annoyed.
Yeah.
And the history teacher didn't like a lot of aspects of it either.
Oh
He would
really?
point out things that he didn't like the way that it told the history of the Civil War. Well, it had a pro, like it had a, like, both sides were doing what they thought was right sort of slant.
Okay.
And yeah, and it also had like a pro American slant on like the conflicts with Native Americans.
Mm-hmm.
Like it said that. Oh, it said that, like, I'm trying to think of what happened. Oh yeah, there was an incident. I don't know the name of the incident, but it was an incident in which a bunch of colonizers, European colonizers, killed a bunch of Native Americans, and it described it as being a misunderstanding.
Well, this gets us off into a whole another politically correct speech and this whole political. I mean, let's don't go there, or we'll be screaming.
Yeah.
But yeah, no,
And then there was creationism taught in the science curriculum. So that was I didn't actually finally realized I didn't actually finally realize that it's that ideology is really full of shit until I was 18.
Uh-huh.
Because I was so encapsulated by certain religious ideologies that even when I found evidence that contradicted what I believed, I thought that there must be. I thought my mindset back then was that there must be. I can't find any evidence right now, but there must be evidence somewhere. There must be something that I'm missing if
Uh-huh.
it's not making sense. Now I have the mindset of I constantly need evidence,
Mm-hmm.
and if I can't see evidence, then I just withhold belief until I find it.
Good for you. Good for you. Wow. Uh, I'm still actually sort of in shock of the whole what. I guess it doesn't surprise me so much in the private school. It's more of just a general shock. I thought there was just a greater awareness in general of autism among students and teachers and professionals. I thought, because I sort of feel
I
like
know
go ahead.
Oh, I think it definitely was much worse back in the '60s, but
Okay. Well, it was non-existent. I mean, but I'm
yeah.
just looking at. I mean, there's so much more attention, just socially, to special needs and diversities and and things like that. To where I thought, okay, we're in a time where kids are at least growing up in an aware society, more so than back when I was just the whatever kid, that was having trouble in school. And they actually, for me, they had said to my parents after I had a diagnosis done, which was the ADD, I was dyslexic, some other stuff on top of it. And they basically told my parents, there's a chance that he probably will never graduate high school. So that's the degree I was struggling in, fifth, sixth grade. And I'm realizing now there are things. There's things I really can't see in myself, that I'm trying to look for evidence to see what my blind spots really are. And so that's kind of where I'm at in my journey. It's only been a year It's only been 16 months since I discovered this, so I'm just really new at being and letting myself be genuine to who I am.
That must have been very liberating.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Tyler, it's so. You are aware of the statistics of the suicide and the suicidal ideation in our community, and I can't say for certain, other than I know I was in pretty bad shape. I kind of had lost. I saw no reason to go on. I had made no plans or anything, but I'm going like, well, this is pretty much over. There's really nothing left, because you're just going to get older and dumber and feebler, and things are just going to get worse at this point on. So what's the use? And ironically, problems I was having at work and then a culmination of everything in my life had me look at Asperger's and start doing some research on it. And within about 48 hours, once I started really, actually what sunk the hook in me was that I started to go into the forums and the blogs and seeing what people were saying about their life experience. And it was nothing short of profound how that hit me, because it was like, this is it. They know what haven't hardly been able to even explain to myself, and they're talking about it. It's an everyday thing. It's part of their lives, and I just knew it. I knew it at a gut level. Now intellectually, I still said, well, you're jumping to a conclusion here that you have autism. Come on, Tom, be real, And but it just, as time progressed, and about 2 months later, then I actually was diagnosed. I had a great doctor who was 100% supportive and said, okay, let's get a diagnosis. The rest is history. Well, the rest is history that's still in the making, or something like that. So what are your interests now, and what are you doing with your life? And you're out of school?
Yes. Currently, so my primary interests.
Okay.
The first thing I would mention is a fascination with what is called amateur astronomy, which is just astronomy as a hobby, like stargazing, studying the.
You're clicking again.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I really like stargazing. I've been into astronomy since I was 12.
Wow, good.
And so I know the night sky from this latitude very well, and cool. I haven't been looking at the stars as much as I used to, because I used to have 4 telescopes. Now I only have one, and it's a smaller one. But a few days ago, I looked at the Orion Nebula and the Sombrero Galaxy, and I just looked at some other star clusters and stuff. But I used to have a big telescope that was a 12-inch Dobsonian.
Yeah. Which
12 inches was the diameter of the primary mirror.
Gotcha.
So I could see dozens of galaxies with that, and that's if I wasn't already in love with astronomy before, after I got that telescope, I was addicted to the sky.
Wow.
So I've been recently getting into it more again. I'm planning on looking at Jupiter and Saturn whenever I can get up early enough.
Okay.
Recently, it's been difficult for me to get up early, but Jupiter and Saturn and Mercury Jupiter, Saturn, Venus, and Mercury are currently visible in the morning sky.
Okay.
So I'd like to look at all 4 of those planets soon.
Cool. I've got a website that I'll send to you after we're done here. It's a gentleman that was here in Columbus, Ohio. It's interesting. His interest is in. He's got his doctorate. He's actually, from what I understand, he was I think he was what you would call an expert witness. So the state would call and say, look, we need to have absolute proof one way or the other on this topic or this whatever. And so he would do the research and say, this person's false, this person is right on, you know. And he had his minor degree in his baccalaureate's in meteorology. And I think he had a sincere fascination at that, but he turned his powers of research into the global warming issue, saying, okay, what's really going on here? And he started a website called Suspicious Observers. And what he does is I think you'd be interested because he does some sincere research on whatever his topics of the day are. And have you ever heard of the what's it called, the electric universe theory?
Say that again.
It's called I think it's called the electric universe theory. That is how the whole universe is set up as electrical bonds, and it works on an electrical principle. But anyway, it's fascinating because that's the theory that he holds to, and so a lot of his stuff is in light of that and showing how he sees it working through what he calls the our space weather. How the sun's affecting the sun or the Earth, and all the planets and sun and so on and so on. But he does a morning broadcast for about 5 minutes every morning. It's free. He does have a paid subscription to more information, but I'll pass that on to you because he's just fascinating to listen to. At least for me, at my level, he might be boring to you. I don't know. You know.
What is the electric universe theory? I may have heard of it before.
Well, I don't know if I can explain it as well as what, you know, I may not do it justice, but he was, okay, one of the things that they've talked about with weather, the correlation between sunspots and high and low pressures on our Earth. There seems to be a direct correlation. Earthquakes have a direct correlation with magnetic charges on the Earth, and some of it makes a lot of sense. And so he'll tie, like, he's got a prediction app that he's out, and he's got like a 60 to 7% hit rate on where a 6.0 or greater earthquake will occur on the Earth, and it's based upon the theory, the electric universe theories, and where he sees the concentrations of magnetic energy on the Earth's core or in the Earth's mantle, and it's all solar driven, and it's, you know, and so he's constantly monitoring coronal mass ejections and what do they call them, the coronal holes where there's a lack of magnetic connection with the Earth, and all of these things affect. And he shows how it ties into health. He's gone into the research of where they find weather actually affects, and then he's talking about maybe more around the magnetic again, the electromagnetic, and so it's like I say, and I've watched it as I haven't. The people that are he's got like about 400,000 people. I think it's 300 and some thousand subscribers, and he does like a yearly conference with all the big names in his field, and it's a pretty interesting subgroup, you know. And he's got people that are legitimate in the field that he's got credibility. I'll put it that way. He's not just some jerk that's saying, hey, I think this is true, you know. He goes into the research, into the science of it. And so anyway, I will pass that on. And just, it's Suspicious Observers, and he spells observers with a 0 instead of the letter O. So if you look it up, that's where you'd find it, even if you can look it up now. But otherwise, I'll send you a link. But I think I always have found it fascinating. I've kind of gotten out of it now because ever since I discovered my neurodiversity, I've kind of shut down everything except attention to what's going on in me. And that's kind of changing, but I've changed. So I'm not sure what I'm going to become.
I'm glad. Thanks for telling me about uh, what you just told me. I'm. It's very it sounds very fascinating.
It is. It is.
I'm
Yeah.
looking it up right now, but you can keep talking
Okay.
as I look at
Yeah.
stuff.
Um, but that's about all I can. I'm fascinated. That's one thing I can say, and I think this is true. I don't know if I would say this globally to everybody autistic because nothing is everybody, but our special interests and the things that we do, we tend to be a group of people that finds fascinations in our world and studies them and just is just like in awe of anything from cooking to the stars to photography to animals to you know literature and just when you're on the websites that are autistic created set up by people and it's just you see that same not everywhere but you see a lot of that so it's fun talking with you and sharing your interests.
Oh yeah, it's I really enjoy. I appreciate someone being interested in my interests,
Yeah.
or and caring about my what I have to say.
Hmm.
Because generally that doesn't occur or hasn't occurred often in my life. But regarding what you said about our diverse interests,
Yeah.
I think that the I think that the stereotype of an autistic person having very narrow interests is I think that's a half truth. I think that autistic people are more likely to have very intense interests which are construed by someone who doesn't understand as um, because their special interest consumes them so much. It consumes their lives to such a degree that their other interests aren't as visible, and someone only if someone only takes a superficial look at the person's characteristics and
Yeah.
um, interests.
Yep.
So, like, if you talked to so many autistic people, let's say that let's say there's an autistic person who's really interested in wildflowers,
Hmm.
and that's their primary hobby. Someone may think that, and they every person they talk to, like every friend they have on a daily basis, they tell them about what they've learned about wildflowers and which wildflowers they've seen um, today, and one most people would construe that as being evidence of narrow interests, but um, most most autistic people that I know have very many interests.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree. You're still there, right? You went really quiet. Hello? Did we lose Skype? We're actually on Skype here, and I'm not sure if what had happened here. Okay, looks like I'm looking at my computer now, and I think he's trying to. I may have to go over and. Yep. Maybe I can do it on this thing. Come on, come on, come up here. Oh, where are you? Here we go. I'll pick it up. All right, here we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we just got disconnected there somehow.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so we were just talking about the people with special interests and how that from the, and I'll say this from, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't. So if you let's say you talk to a neurotypical, who's and I don't mean to like stereotype neurotypicals either, but let's say you have an average neurotypical who's interested in primarily in just very typical things,
Right.
like let's say sports, magazines, anything else that's very popular.
Right.
Of course, autistic people, if they are probably not necessarily less likely to have those obsessions, but autistic people are interested in a greater variety of things. But if you talk to someone who's interested in who like handles their hobbies in a very normal way, people don't think of them as having narrow interests because they talk about everything equally, and if someone else tells them about their interest, which also happens to overlap with it somewhat because it's also popular, then they seem to be open to it. So, but if you talked to an autistic person, it may be that they're interested in dozens of subjects, but all of which are subjects which others don't care about. So they don't experience any overlap.
Yeah.
So they're more likely to see an autistic person as being rigid and only interested in certain things, because when other people are the same way, it's just that there's more overlap because they're in a majority.
I think another issue. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry if I didn't make that very clear.
No, you did. You that's clear. I was going to add to that as I was thinking that that whole perspective of, I mean, when you had said people usually don't show an interest in what you're saying, and that is, I think, what you just said is part of the reason. Another thing is that if you were talking, a lot of people don't have that level of knowledge and are intimidated. And so if you start talking about astronomy and specifics about astronomy, I mean, it's one thing to say, oh, there's going to be there's going to be an eclipse, so and so and such, and oh, that's cool, blah, blah, and that's about the extent of it. But if you start going into, wow, did you know that and like I was talking about the electrical universe theory, I've tried to talk to people about that and going, this is so fascinating. And they're just like, huh? And you just quickly learn, like, okay, it's not a subject that they have any interest in. And I find this too, sort of in academia, where the old egghead label that people put on that aren't in college, or there's sort of people are kind of looked down almost as if they're either intimidated or threatened by their intellect or their knowledge or whatever, and I just wonder if that's not sort of an extend into the perceptions of autism too.
It could be. It definitely could be. For me personally, though, I've had difficulty engaging in conversation with people about any subject, really. Even when I've talked to other people whose interests are in something that I happen to be interested in, and they're more knowledgeable on the topic than I am, I find that actually when they speak to me, they have a sort of an opposite. They seem to display an opposite way of thinking from what you described, such that they seem to think that because I know so little about the topic that I can't really contribute, which may be the case, but generally, if I've talked to someone about something that they know a lot about, and if I try to contribute to the conversation, this is typically in a group setting. Let's say a group of people are talking about psychology, and then I offer my insights. Generally, they're sort of ignored, even if the conversation is between one person who knows a lot about psychology and another person who knows less than both of us.
Now, is this all neurotypical?
For some reason, generally.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just wondering. Hmm. Hmm. Wow. I kind of remember. I do remember this feeling when I was younger. I think I actually tended to just engage less and less and less with people because it's like beating your head against a wall. It just feels good when you stop. It's in and so I don't know. As far as why people would what it is that they are reacting to, that they're not letting you fully participate in the exchange. I don't know.
I've never quite understood why either. I mean, it must be a ramification of my neurodiversity, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand which aspects of it
Yeah.
it impedes my social other people's interpretation of me the most.
Mm-hmm. I, yeah, and its language is so unusual because it can be timing. I mean, it can be. I'll tell you what I have. I'm on the Autism Society board here locally, and I sit in their meetings. And there may be something I want to inject or interject into the conversation, but I, for the life of me, cannot find the timing. I raise my hand. That's the only thing I know what to do. Going like, hey, I'd like to say something, but because and I even have trouble with you. I feel like I walk over you. I'm trying not to, but I have thoughts in my head, and it's like I want to and say them while they're there because I'll lose them. That's part of the problem. Is that I may forget what I was going to say, but and so I know that's one I've caught, a big one that has always been with me and still is with me, and I think too I have a tendency to go on and elaborate and because I don't know that I've made the point that I want to make. It's like trying to find the words and then especially if you don't get any kind of reaction, it's like, well, then I must not have explained it. They're still wondering what it is I'm talking about, so I'll tell them more. And those kind of things that I, in all honesty, I don't get out enough and socialize enough to really, and I don't know that I really care to. I do. I shouldn't say that, but I'm frustrated with it, and I've got other things that I think I've got better things to do than beat my head against that wall again.
Everything you've just said is extremely relatable. I also have
Yeah.
immense difficulty interjecting at any time. I never know how to. This is one of the greatest difficulties I've always had with group conversations, and the reason that I have had I've had virtually no fulfilling experiences with a group of people.
Yeah.
Because I can never what I say my part of the conversation is always ignored and drowned out, and there's no way for me to interject in a way that's socially acceptable, and I don't know how that's even done.
Yeah.
It's for one thing, I can't. I feel as if my voice isn't. It's difficult to describe it. For me, speaking feels to be a chore if I'm having to do it in a way that I'm talking over someone, or if I have to interrupt someone.
Yeah.
I feel as if what I say had better be important if I'm saying something.
Yep.
If I'm interjecting, and if people not necessarily important, but what other people perceive as important, which generally it is not.
Yeah.
And something else you said. Oh yes. I also don't experience I don't experience much social motivation
Hmm.
for that reason. For That's actually a rather minor reason. Not minor, but it's one among very many
Okay.
reasons that I don't. I typically prefer to spend most of my time alone. I find that whenever I've tried to get out of my bubble, I become very exhausted and have no more motivation.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. I hear you. I just one of the let's say about 2 years, year and a half ago, I was at a conference for I God knows how I'm working maintenance right now, and there's a bunch of maintenance guys. It's this zoo that they create. They rent out a hotel for 3-4 days or whatever it is, and you're torn away from your home and your comfort zone, and you're staying in this foreign place with these foreign people. And anyway, but I was sitting there, and there was something I wanted. It was amazing. We were in one of the conference rooms, and somebody brought up a topic, and so everyone was sort of talking about it and putting their 5 cents worth in. And there's something I thought was really important I wanted to add, or at least a question that would have opened up more and more important. And so I'm sitting there just like, okay, he's talking, and then all of a sudden someone else talks. It's like, wait, I wanted to, okay, well, let him finish. And then they're going on, and a couple of the people in there, and then it's like, when they're about finished, like, I'm okay. And then someone else, and finally, what I wanted to talk about that was somewhat relevant, I finally got my hand up. I finally got everyone to go, what's the idiot up there? Why is he raising his hand? And I went ahead and just said it. And it was so past, the topic had moved on so far past what it was I wanted to say that people kind of just went, it was just like, I must have sounded like I passed gas or something. And it was just that look of like, okay, yes. And then it was like it's like I'm invisible, completely invisible.
That's also relatable. I've had those experiences, but generally I don't say what I want to say after I realize that it's no longer relevant.
Yeah,
but that is one disparity I experience. That is one disparity between my style of conversation and that of the average neurotypical. Is the conversation. The conversation doesn't tend to revolve around any topic, and the changes in subjects don't seem to evolve smoothly, and that creates that's problematic for me. I don't know how to engage in that sort of conversation. Whenever I talk, I like to talk about something specifically. And when as the conversation progresses, it evolves into something more broad, and then takes like turns into something specific and detailed, and then like broadens out again and goes somewhere else.
Yeah.
But in a manner which makes sense.
Right.
Something that you could understand how it went from one topic to the other within the 30-minute time span.
Yes, I think this illustrates the autistic mindset so really well, because and it's interesting what you just said about, because I've been calling it going off on tangents. When I'll be in a conversation, and it just sort of evolves into something else, but it's all connected. It's all, like, so if we're talking about a certain planet, and then we start talking about another planet, then that makes sense. But if you go from planets to your cat, or what you bought at the grocery store, or the sports whatever, it's like it leaves both of them empty. I'm sort of in a fascination now with the differences between neurotypical mindsets and autistic, for very selfish reasons, because I want to learn about my own mindset. But and I'm sort of contrasting it with the neurotypical. I'm reading a book by Ian Ford that was The Field Guide to Earthlings, and I'm finding it really fascinating and helpful to give me an idea of, because I've always assumed that my mind was like everyone else's, and it's like, no, it's not. And so that's what I'm learning now, is how different I am.
Yeah. What have you read so far in this book?
The first couple chapters. They got up to the point where basically we're talking about, let me think, is how neurotypical people symbolize everything, and how they use that to sort of buffer the amount of information that we are exposed to every second of our lives, and how they then sort of go from a symbolic presence, it's like they may be in a room, but things are thought of symbolically. Okay, I'm at work now. People have certain hierarchical positions around me. I've got a certain task I've got to do, and sort of things fit into a formula, but it's all based on symbols instead of actual events and present. The presence of the present moment. Does that make sense?
I think so, but I need a bit of elaboration.
If you want me to, the only way I can get you very much specifics, because I've been so scattered on things I've been doing that I haven't gone back to the book now for quite a few days, so it's not fresh in my mind. If you want me to get the book, I can give you some more examples. Would you want me to do that? It's just in the other room.
Sure.
Okay, I'll be right back. And I'll just sort of hold this up and go, this is the book I'm talking about. Okay. He breaks this book down. Have you read the book by chance?
I have not.
Okay. He breaks it into different groups of patterns. And so far, I'm actually not even through the second chapter yet. But the first chapter, he talks about patterns of perception. And these are his own words, so I'll have to somewhat define them. But he said there's a desensitization. One of the things that, one reason they use symbols is because whereas somebody autistic is constantly dealing with the new of the moment, why things can be overwhelming is because things are always in change. What you did yesterday has changed today, and so there's variations in it, so that we're aware of those things, so that it's new. Whereas if it's symbolic, they look for the same symbols to be there every day, and so when those are there, they're happy. When they're not, they're either they don't see what the new symbol is or what the new situation is, or they are upset and they need to get status quo back. Symbolic filtering is a way of also is when you go into a situation, you can immediately, like if you go into a party, we'll say, there are certain symbolic things that'll be happening in a party, so that there will be a certain type of talk that is done. There will be there are certain traditions of, like, people will bring food, and they have a meaning. I mean, it's not just to eat, and it's not just to talk to people. It is the type of topics, and they have like a deeper meaning than what it is on the surface, which I think is why people who are autistic have such a hard time in conversation, because we're looking at the surface, we're looking at what's actually going on, and they're looking at, well, why is he saying that, or why is he asking that, or I'm trying to talk about sports, which is the thing that people are supposed to talk about at a party, not talk about astronomy. And so that, why are you, and so and then they start, the symbolism may be, well, he's just trying to one up me, or he's trying to show that he's better than me, and those kind of thoughts go on, instead of being, oh wow, I know really not that much about astronomy, but I'd love to talk with you about it. Tell me about it.
Yeah, I didn't understand what you were saying until you mentioned that.
Okay.
As in, whenever I say something, or I'm engaging in a topic of whenever I'm engaging in a conversation, there's a deeper meaning, but the deeper meaning is conceptual rather than trying to figure out the motivations of another person. I tend to be, if I'm whenever I'm speaking with someone, I prefer to take things at face value rather than interpreting everything through a framework such that I can understand what they're trying to do.
Right.
Do you understand what I mean?
Absolutely.
Basically, just the opposite of what you were saying before. If someone says something to me that is fascinating, my mind is not going to go to what if they're trying to one up me.
Right.
Ultimately, I don't even care. I don't care enough that it's going to come to my mind because I'm going to be, if it's something that I'm interested in, I'm going to be too busy thinking about whatever it was they said, even if it's something I'm not interested in.
Yeah.
If they ask me a question about something, then my mind's going to be too busy trying to find an answer to think about what their intention for asking was.
Mm-hmm. I have a memory of going to a party, and I can. It's funny as I spend more time filtering everything through my new autistic mindset or perspective. I went back to this one party that I had gone to, and I remember going around and talking with people and saying, "Oh, what do you do? What, or what, something like that." And then I remember one guy was saying something about it was something to do with physics or something, and I thought, well, I don't know a whole lot about this, but I'll just tell him what experiences I've had, or thoughts that I've had. And so I tried to engage him in a conversation on that, and maybe it's what you were saying earlier. It's just sort of like either you are out of your league, mister, you shouldn't be even talking about this, or what are you trying to prove? Or instead of it being like, oh, cool, you're interested in what I am. Sure, I understand you don't know. It's like I was talking with you about astronomy. You could tell me just about anything you know about astronomy, and it'll probably be new to me, but I will be honestly interested in it. And I will learn it, and I will retain it, and I will keep that as a little tidbit of knowledge that the next time, I'll apply it somewhere. It's useful knowledge. And that's not what, when I was at that party, I'm looking back on that, I'm just thinking, what were they thinking of me? Because I felt like I was sort of being myself then, still. I was young. I was probably still 20-ish, about your age. And but after a while, you start to, at least I did, I started to change, eventually unfortunately, to the point where I started to isolate. It's like, no, I don't want to do it anymore.
Oh, yeah. I don't understand why people aren't more excited about their interests in a way that they're excited when someone asks them questions about their field or tells them their ideas about their field. Like, of course, if somebody is saying, I know more about your field than you do, you're wrong about physics, then I can understand why someone would be annoyed, unless someone actually knows what they're talking about.
Yeah.
But I don't understand why people don't want to pass on their knowledge.
Right.
And if I met someone who's is interested in astronomy and physics as I am, then I'd want to talk to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, I don't actually know that much about physics, but I'm in the process of learning.
It's no wonder that people who are autistic tend to gravitate towards fields of fact and knowledge, and I guess that knowledge is sort of is redundant, but it's as opposed to, we were talking about the the social graces or the whole sports thing. And I mean, there's a side to sports that's probably interesting. If you were in the strategies of how to win a game, and maybe that's what I lack the knowledge of to be able to become interested in it, but I never have been. Hey, we're passing up our hour here, and the only reason I want to cut it short is not because we don't have more to talk about, but because people generally don't want to listen to anything much more than an hour.
Okay.
But if you would like to, at some point, we could get back into a conversation, because I think you're a fascinating person to talk to and bring a great perspective for other people to understand. You explain yourself well and your position well, and I think it's a very important position for everyone to understand. So does that sound possible? Well, we can talk about that later.
Yes. Do you want to do another interview, or just a regular talk?
Well, we could probably do another interview. I mean, it's up to you. With this whatever
Okay.
is of interest.
I might.
Yeah.
I think it might be of interest to. I think some of my other hobbies
Okay.
may be of interest to you as well. So I might.
Okay.
I definitely would want to talk to you about more about my interests in psychology.
Yeah. We didn't get off into that. You said that was one you wanted to hit, and we went to astronomy and then off on another whole direction. So, yes, we will get back into that. I thought this was a very interesting conversation. You're the youngest person I have interviewed, and I learned a lot from you, Tyler. Thank you.
Oh, thank you too. It's nice to talk to someone who has been in this, who's in the same, who's had the same experiences as I have.
Yeah. Well, and it helps me to talk with you, because there are things that you brought to mind, and things you confirmed, and whatever because I'm still learning how to be autistic. I know that may sound really strange, but that really is true. I'm dropping the old behaviors and trying to be genuine with myself and what I really like and don't like and how I really feel and all those things. So it's been quite a process, and talking with you helps. So I thank you.
I'm really glad I could be a help.
Thank you. You were. Okay, you can stay on too. I'm just going to sort of wrap up here and just give a sign off here on the camera here. So, and yes, this was Tyler Malden, and I thank Tyler, and thank all of you out there in the audience for watching Discovering Autism, and hope this was a benefit to you like it was to me. So thank you and good day.